Hey everybody, Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cracking the Comms Code. And today we're going to talk about how PR and marketing sometimes live in a silo, and how the PR side can break down those silos. And we have a marketing person in Debbie who will be able to tell us how the marketing side can do better to break down those silos to create better outcomes. Especially, and Wendy and Andrew mentioned this in our prep call, how things have changed in the last year with search, where a year ago it really wasn't part of the conversation we had, and now it is. So again, I'm Dustin Siggins. We'll have Debbie, Andrew, and Wendy introduce themselves, and we'll jump right in.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. I'm Debbie Bates-Trott. I am the CMO at an agency in Alexandria, Virginia called Yes And. I've been here for about just under 5 years, and I lead growth for the agency. So I sit in the seat of managing marketing, business development, and managing our PR relationship. So very interested in being a part of this conversation. Yes And's a full service agency, so we work across all channels, and so it gives me an interesting perspective on this conversation.
I'm happy to go next. Andrew Moir, General Manager and EVP at Reputation Partners. We're a strategic communications and PR firm that's dedicated to protecting and building our clients' reputations. We're headquartered in Chicago. I've been here just about a week or so shy of 7 years with RP. And my background prior to that, spent some time at big agencies and came out of the public sector campaigns and elections as well.
Awesome. I'll go next. Wendy Serafin, NIFERS Group. I'm a fractional communications leader that focuses on PR, executive communication, thought leadership, internal, and reputation. I've been doing this for several years on and off. I've also been in in-house leadership roles as well, focused in fintech and in financial services.
We're going to hit today again is why PR needs marketing, why marketing needs PR, and why there need to be fewer silos between those two sides of the conversation, of the marketing and branding conversation. So let's start with Andrew and Wendy, where we were in this conversation a year ago and where we are today. And then Debbie, be very interested, you talked before about how your company's added in-house PR just in the last few years. So it'd be very interesting to see how you've seen the landscape change, both as an agency in general, but also sort of in the wider world. And anyone who's watching, be sure to ask any questions, bring your experiences to the comments so we can answer them in real time.
Mhm. I'll go first. I mean, it was, yeah, a year ago we were talking about AI. It was starting to kind of be the thing, maybe play around with it. Now it's completely changed in terms of how you look at it, how you want to optimize it, how it's kind of upping the game from an editorial thought leadership perspective. Citations are king, press releases are a newfound importance. So I think what's interesting is there's still things that have stayed the same, but there's also that change that we've seen and from the AI optimization. So it's still important to have that strong partnership with content. It's still important to understand that PR can support earned, owned, and paid, and that the story still matters. The value of how you show up as, within your company and your narrative still matters, but now it's even more important as you look at it from an AI optimization standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. And whether it's causation or correlation, I think the addition of AI and everyone's extreme focus on it, rightfully so, it's impacting every part of our world. Whether it's because of that or just happening at the same time, I think this last year has really shown the value of closer coordination between PR and marketing, that we're all talking to the same audiences in slightly different ways. And the more that that can be coordinated and create this virtuous cycle where each piece of content is being used for multiple purposes, whether it's a marketing piece of content or a PR piece of content, all of that's going to be consumed by the same audiences we want. It's going to be used by those large language models in some type of AEO or GEO product that we want to be seeing those placements in. And so the more that we can coordinate that among the different practices, the better we're able to get that content to be cited, to be sourced, to be viewed as trustworthy and credible, which again helps both of our goals, ultimately laddering up to the same one, which is growth and business success for our clients.
Agree. Agree.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that. We almost all need a little bit of a playbook in how does our brand come to life and how does that messaging for each of the brands that we work for come to life? And then how does that play out across keyword searches and how do we balance telling that great story in PR that also is hitting on all of those notes that are so critical for, LLMs and search engines to continue to find us and to differentiate us to make us a clear winner in whatever our category is. I think that's the secret sauce that we're all looking for to make sure we don't give up our identity, and give up what makes us unique. But what makes us unique sometimes isn't how we get found.
Well, and I'm running an op-ed right now that cites one of the muckrack studies that points at something like 84% of search is not, it is, if you want to call it, say, not owned media. I'm not going to call it earned media, but they call academic sources, government sources, etc. And 27%, I believe, was journalism. And I'm using that study because I think it's really interesting to see how earned does get, 27% is huge. And of course, every model is looks at things a little bit differently. I have a significant concern. I was going to bring this up later in the show, but I think it's a good time to bring it up now. Is I think PR people are making a big mistake by focusing so much on search that we're forgetting about the need for content, the actual user experience. Just like marketing people 10, 15 years ago were so focused on SEO that when you got to the website, sometimes it was just boring. It didn't offer any value. And so I'd be very interested, I look at when we do PR, there's two things that we tell our clients. We're either air cover, no pun intended, but we haven't taken a RAM yet because we haven't invested the ground troops. We've done the air cover, and that's great. We bombed a bunch of stuff, but we didn't have the ground troops of marketing, right, so to speak, to actually take our RAM, which is why we've been in there for so long. Similarly, in business, if you want to have air cover, that's fine, but it's going to live in the ether, respectively, and your competition is going to be able to build back up and take back ground. And so I'd be very interested in whether you all think that PR folks are focusing so much on AEO and related matters in the last year that are we losing touch with the user experience? I feel there's a significant risk there.
I agree. I think that's the biggest challenge that you still have to know that people want to read this. It has to be interesting. And if the pendulum sways so far to that way, it's just we're all the same again, and there's no differentiation. I mean, it's a big risk. It's also a big risk because, I don't know what the stat is now. At one point, it was like 10 PR pros to one journalist. There's less journalists.
6 to 1, I think, was the latest one I saw.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so getting earned media has gotten even extremely hard, even more so now, even though it's so important. So
Yep.
it's this weird, like, you can't try to get a bunch of earned content or earned-ish content, without sacrificing the story and, to your point, the audience at the end of the day. So I agree, it's a huge challenge, and it's something that PR people have to think of and actually be that person in the room that says, look, I know we can do all this content and we can find all these publications that maybe publish it. But is it really good content? And are we just diluting ourselves in the end? So it's a balance for sure. It's just like it was with SEO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is why we focus so much. And again, it's sort of back to your first question, Dustin, where PR and marketing can work so well together is to prevent that overreaction one way or the other. And we talk about with our clients this content flywheel, where you want every piece of content to
Everyone loves
work.
this word.
Yeah, to work in multiple different ways.
Mhm.
And yes, it has to come back to the narrative and storytelling. There has to be something compelling you're saying, but thinking differently about the first use and iterative uses of the same piece of content. So maybe PR creates a thought leadership piece for an executive that goes onto LinkedIn first. But then you can take pieces of that. And I don't think it was the muckrack one. There was one study I was looking at yesterday that talked about sort of FAQs or question and answers on websites being an incredibly high sourced piece of content. So do you take that LinkedIn thought leadership piece and create 2, 3, 4 question and answers that you put on your website?
Right.
And then do you take a piece of it and pitch it for earned media? Do you turn it into some paid ads? Like all of that goes into the iterative reuse of one piece of content for different marketing and PR purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But it still comes down to that story. There has to be something compelling you're saying that is useful, unique, and interesting from your client, your brand, your company's point of view.
Yeah. But there is pressure, like internally. So I work with clients, I'm embedded in companies, and I mean, there's a push to constantly, really embed that in AI in. And so it is a balance for sure. It's definitely a challenge for comms leaders to kind of play that role of kind of managing and what it should be and what it maybe shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit to not being an overly AI savvy person, right? We focus on the placement. And then we work with the marketing teams to make sure it's repurposed appropriately, where we have that access to the marketing team. And so one interesting thing that happened, I'm actually writing an op-ed about this as well, is KPIs, right? And I remember writing a piece for PR Daily in 2022 because a client asked us for potential reach numbers. And I said, that's useless because I've gotten onto the website. I've been published at the websites that get 1 million views a month. And of course, I think it was Meltwater said potential reach is 1 million. And the real read was about 10,000 people, which is still fine. It's still substantial given the audience. That's 1% of the potential reach. And I wrote this piece, and then 2 years later, what was it called? What was the group of large PR firms? They had created a sort of conglomerate, and they all announced that they were no longer doing potential. The Merkle Collective or Marker Collective, they announced that they were not doing impressions and potential reach anymore, and everyone praised it as this like growth in the industry. I was like, I don't know. I at the time was running a 2-person firm. I was seeing this in 2017 and 2022. So we had a client come to us and say, we need KPIs. How many outlets have you pitched? And I said, we don't know and we're not going to track it for you. It's a useless metric. But by the time we were done talking to them, we had given them like 8 metrics, all of which flipped back to them. How long did it take your team to create a blog post without the earned media content as a starter versus earned media? How much social media content did you get? If you got 5 clicks and you only get 10, what were the quality of the clicks? Looking at all of those things from the newsletter, the social media, the blog post effort, and all of that, and that client went back to her boss and said, we have all this data we need to gather. It was no longer put on our shoulders because we understood how to connect with marketing. And so Debbie, I'd be very interested in seeing, you were at a small agency, your own, and now you're with a much larger agency. How do you see sort of measurement going on in ways that are actually valuable versus just trying to look good as marketing and PR try to work together?
I mean, we always, with anything big that we think is substantial that will really help to build our Yes and brand and reputation, we always start with the story with PR. So we start with PR, like what's the story? What's the work that we can share? What do we want to get out there? And we'll start there. And then once that gets picked up is when we'll start to bring it into our owned places. Like we won't post a blog on our website until if it was something that was going to go out through PR, make sure that it's out there first and see what pickup we get. When we do a press release of a new hire or an acquisition, we're getting that out in press first before we're, putting it on our internal and sharing it internal. And we're then, have a plan to drip that out through social and try to get as long of a time, with eyeballs on it as possible. So I think that's where, we take their guidance and we work hand in glove in that, the bigger stories, the approach for those things has to go out there first. And then we have our plan for how it's going to, transpire across all of our channels and things like that. Ultimately we're measuring it by new business, but it takes a long time and some of it's, asking the questions. I mean, we use marketing automation to track folks who are visiting our site, not specific folks, but I can see the companies and the people who are engaging. And then hopefully down the road, they see the value in reaching out to us to be their agency. And, our team really keeps track of that. And where might that have come from? But you're right, just eyeballs or just clicks doesn't really mean anything unless you can get it, all the way through the pipeline. the technology does that for us with web traffic and email opens and, all of those things. But um, we get a dashboard from our PR firm with, everything, the playbook, everything
Right.
that's been shown.
Yeah.
And, we've only been doing that external PR for the last, I guess, 3 years, and it's made a big impact. So it gives us much greater content and things to work with from the inside.
I would say one thing for metric that I would just learned this week or was working through, it's with a partner, but they are able to take content and press releases and things like that and kind of show where the strength is from an AI optimization and where placements are more helpful or not. I think it's still early days, but it's interesting to see what publications have higher citation value. That's super interesting, and that speaks to marketing executive business in terms of how we're kind of driving some value. So we're digging into that, which is cool because I think we need that because PR we've always struggled with. How do we prove the value? My one boss, old boss said, well, when you don't do it. I'm like, well, that doesn't help when you really need some numbers. But he wasn't wrong on that.
Hmm. Well, from a marketing standpoint, I really love using, the AI tools for the research piece. Being able to really ask, and we have some trained AI on our Yes and brand, and so to be able to ask questions about what CMOs or what marketing leaders are struggling with in particular industries, and being able to get all of that data back really helps to support some of our positioning on content and expertise that we want to bring to light and get out there, because it is about, and I mean that's what Yes and is about. It's about understanding the challenge or the constraints that our customers are dealing with and coming up with those creative and ways of solving them for them. So we that's what I love, my personal use of AI to really help us get into some of the challenges that we should be talking about.
Yeah, I think one of the broader point on metrics is one, obviously PR has a give and take, love-hate relationship with. Is it vanity metrics? Is it impressions? Wendy, to your point, how do we prove the ROI in particular? We can't track often as directly as a marketing program where you've got every stage of the funnel tracked and measured. And so I think and I'm interested to see how this plays out with AI because I think there's a piece of it where it just becomes another metric that no one really knows how you get it. You have some ideas of how you can impact it, but it's not a direct one-to-one, we did this, therefore this thing happened. And so what we've been trying to do with some of our clients is really focus more on what are the bottom line business goals and objectives, and how can collectively communications and marketing impact the decisions that go to positively influencing that bottom line? What is the action that we are trying to encourage people to do? And where can we, marketing, PR, comms, sort of the group, play in getting people towards that action that we need them to take? Is PR really that sort of like front line, trying to raise broader awareness, give people some initial recall of a brand or a company, and then it sort of like leads into then the marketing funnel where you can better track. But maybe we have a piece of content then that comes in, or an earned piece that's a high value placement in a trade publication that's very well regarded, that moves people through the funnel somewhere. And so again, I think it just points even more to the value where you can have really good integration between marketing and PR, because the metrics can be so hard to prove out, especially when you're trying to do it independently.
Hmm. I mean, you always have to be top of mind. And so what you're describing there is, I mean, we can have our foundational plans where we're, you know, running through, our funnel, but it is those bigger moments that PR can get for us, or that regular cadence that we're getting, with our content out there that's going to keep us top of mind when any customer is looking for what we're talking about. So yeah, it's when I was kind of reading up on this conflict or this idea of PR and marketing together, it almost seemed a little foreign to me because that is not how we operate as a full service agency. It's
Right.
all kind of working together, and that is where the engine can perform the best.
And the thing I posted on this with this episode was in 2023. Like I was raised by a marketing guy. and I went into PR. So I understand, generally speaking, how they work together. And it was such a struggle to get our client. They were paying us $7,500 a month. We did an initial $50,000 big push in their study, and then we did $7,500 a month. And I kept saying, let me get in touch with the marketing team. Well, their social media person was 10 hours a week going for a master's degree in social work, who, when we got them an op-ed in Newsweek, didn't say, glad to be in Newsweek. It was, look at this great piece Newsweek published. And then we went to the SEO people, and they said, oh, we're not even doing SEO yet. We're still over here in this other area. So we were getting Fox News, Washington Examiner, we got States Newsroom, we got Newsweek, we got all these outlets. And I think they got 120 total visits to their website. And that's when I really realized like that air cover versus ground troops conversation has to happen with every single client.
100%.
Because otherwise, we're not setting expectations. And to your point, Debbie, and something as well as you implied, Andrew, is what does your client actually need? My business partner was on the show last week. I call him Dad. My kids call him Grandpa. And he said, no company probably has a higher bounce rate than his website does. And he is totally fine with that. Because the radio, $25,000 a month in radio ads brings in the audience. They go to the website for the phone number, they grab it and call. And that's how they have 7,500 customers a month, a year rather. They don't care. Their metrics are so specific to their need. And I think that's where a lot of PR people, especially because, as you said, Andrew, historically there's not been that great understanding or availability of data, sort of just don't know how to think it through consistently.
Agree.
Let me pull up the next question that we talked with on our prep call. So let's see. I guess let's talk about breaking down silos, because Debbie, you said that you've never really experienced that, but my understanding from people on LinkedIn and minimal experience that I've had where there's this collision where PR says we're doing the thing and marketing says we're doing the thing, and neither one is talking to each other. So Andrew, you talked about that you all work with marketing firms, something for joint proposals and joint projects. How have you seen walls that existed being broken down inside of your agency?
That was to me. I mean, I think what we've found is we've found some great marketing firms to partner with. Sorry, I don't going wild here for 1 minute if you hear the background noise.
No.
My kids just got home, so
good.
No.
Yeah, we found some great marketing firms to partner with, and what's beneficial is we're not looking to do marketing. We have our expertise. We're B2B corporate comms, PR communicators. That's what we do. And so the ability to bring the best of what we do and the best of what a marketing firm does, it's not necessarily that it's the perceived or real potential conflict and competition that I guess is maybe one of those walls that we don't have to worry about breaking down because it's just not there. We're not looking to do what they do. They're not looking to do what we do, but we know we can provide a better solution to the client if we bring those services that we each provide together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have one client vertical, which is the association community, that I can see the barrier and the wall being very clear to what you're saying, Dustin. You know, my career has been a lot of work with associations, and over again, I see them challenged and struggling, and in some cases failing, because PR is over here in one silo and marketing and comms is over here. They don't talk to each other, nor do they really pass anything across the wall. And so the messages going out there from the association and PR, like some of the things that we talked about earlier too, the messages aren't consistent. What they say about the organization isn't consistent. And then we wonder why, you know, those types of organizations are struggling, because they're struggling to gain new members, because their messages aren't clear. They're struggling to grow from non-dues revenue because they're not marketing their products correctly, because they're not communicating across that wall. So in a more in-house situation like that, it's super apparent where the struggle is, and you see it become more successful when they reorg and they put PR, marketing, and comms kind of in one group, where they are kind of then maybe forced, I don't know, to like work together and figure out how growth happens.
Potentially. I think the other challenge is comms in general has been rising to the top, where there's an argument that it should report directly to the CEO. Like, in the end of the day,
bring that up.
exactly. So
Right.
while you can report into right now I report into a CMO, and he very much values communication, so he understands. So I am kind of in my own little world, but I am embedded in the marketing group, and it really just comes down to it's like a people thing, building relationships,
Hmm.
embedding yourself in these meetings, kind of the help me help you, bring me in early because I can provide more value, and when you show more value, they're going to bring you in longer. It's people. And I think depending on where you are as a communications leader, it shouldn't matter where you sit. You really have to be all things to all. You have to know every single person, every single group, connect with product, connect with strategy, connect with legal, connect with government affairs. Like that is the job. And if you start to do that and you start to bridge those lines of communication and just reach out, I mean it's simple, but it has to happen. Regardless. But so that's kind of been my experience where it's worked and you just keep trying. I mean, you may not get the first invite for the first two meetings, but you make it the third one and then you're off to the races. So
Yeah, and I think listening, like if everyone has listening in
Yes.
their mindset, then you
mhm,
can come together, in a much stronger fashion.
100%.
And related to listening is get rid of the ego. We had a client, one of our biggest client, we do 25 placements a month, mostly op-eds, but other placements as well. And they suggested recently, oh, we should do this series of op-eds. And I said, well, isn't your goal this? And they said, yeah, that is. And I said, okay, that's a digital marketing play. Because by the time you turn around the author, the piece, get it, it's probably going to be late. And it certainly isn't going to stand out. And it's not going to drive, in this case, a public policy issue. That activation that you're looking for, you're better off spending twice as much to get 10 or 100x the eyeballs that are more likely to take action on the speed you're looking for. So I think a lot of times we actively give up business because we're a project based, right? So this is not a retainer. So everything we do for them gains us money. When we recommend digital marketing, it doesn't make us money. But by saying, go do a digital marketing campaign instead, oh, and if you want to hire us, we have a vendor. But they do that in house. So I know that we're going to lose money, but at the same time, it earns that greater trust that we're a strategic partner, not just an earned media vendor, so to speak.
Agree. Agree.
Andrew, what haven't we talked about that you think is really important that PR agencies need to hear?
Well, I feel like we've done a pretty good job hitting on all the sort of hot button issues right now. I would just continue to stress that the more that we don't have to ask the question, what are the barriers that we should break down, but what are the ways that you're finding you work best together? I think shifting that first question would be really valuable for the broader discipline of communications and marketing. If we start from the place of there has to be a conflict, therefore, what are the barriers we're breaking down? We're already starting from a place where we're not coordinating and we're not creating that virtuous flywheel where we're doing the best work that we can for our clients. So the
Yeah.
more that we can start to focus, on what are we doing, how can we complement and work better collectively and not really breaking down silos, I think it's just going to be beneficial for all of us.
I mean, and think about the time savings that can happen when you do that. If we're doing something that's duplicative at this point, because marketing's doing this thing over here and PR is doing this thing over here, but if we were coming together, maybe we could do this thing together and then parse it out to where it makes the most sense. Because I can see that, if the goals aren't aligned for how you're working as a team, then there's probably time savings to be done in that kind of collaboration.
Right.
And we all need more time. I feel like that's the one thing we all need.
Well, and can we achieve the goal faster? You almost certainly
Fair.
can when you're combining the two. And so I wonder, one of the things that I think we all probably all talk a lot about is the need to know the numbers, right? The PR people on LinkedIn who say I'm bad at math vastly outnumber those of us who actually enjoy math. Don't tell anybody. But at the end of the day, we have to know the numbers. And I also think it's really important when you're an agency or a consultant that you know how to translate those numbers in a way that not just the CEO is going to understand, but your point of contact. And so a lot of times we provide those numbers to our CMO or whoever our point of contact is so they can bring it up the chain in order to create that acceleration. Because if the leadership isn't seeing the value, then we're not going to get anywhere fast at all.
Yeah,
Wendy, can
agree,
you speak
agree.
to some of the corporate aspects? Meredith Klein was on the show a while ago, and she said in corporate environments, communications and marketing are usually planning things together in that
Hmm.
corporate environment because they're pretty disciplined about that component.
Hmm. Yeah.
How have you seen that differently as you became a consultant versus when you're in-house?
Um, well, that's actually this I don't maybe a superpower I bring because I've lived that seat. So you kind of bring that in and where you can quickly see where it is not engaging or it's not connected and quickly kind of bring that together. Do a lot of education. I think, if in some clients they've never had a comms person before, so just understanding like what we do and why we do it and why it matters. For us, we feel like a broken record, but it's really important to educate folks as they're kind of putting together their plans. So I always come in right away with more of an education mindset, like help me help you kind of thing. And that usually takes a little time, and you have to swing a couple times at bat, but usually at the end you'll start to get pulled in, and there start to be more synergies between the two. Um, this is usually kind of how I attack it. So
Well, I guess my question is when you're in-house, right, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of resources, when you're coming in from
Yeah,
the outside, there's certainly you're getting paid whatever you're getting paid, but if they've never
right.
had a comms person, part of the reason we switched our whole branding from working with, Debbie and I met when I was in Tyson's Corner, Virginia.
Yeah.
The trade association I worked at is about a mile, I think, Debbie, from where you work. I was right over by the
Mm-hmm.
Whole Foods,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh yeah, not even a
so
mile, 2 blocks.
okay, 2 blocks, and it was that challenge you talked about was right there. I was the first director of comms. I knew media relations really well. If I knew then what I know now, 9 years later, I would have got rid of the Facebook page. I would have done a lot of things differently. But I've just lost my train of thought, so someone else needs to talk because I have no idea what I was going to say.
I mean, in terms of resource, I mean, obviously you're
Oh,
coming
thank
in,
you.
you are,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
you're the resource, and you can recommend different things that may be more helpful. Honestly, that's where AI is helpful. Like there is a world where you could probably build an entire comms agents to help you support all the things you need to do to help the company kind of move forward. And then you kind of rise to the top as for the strategic kind of been there, done that type of advisor, if you will, and still be able to get things done. So it depends on the company, what the resource, to your point, what the resources are. Do they have a PR firm that you need to manage? Do you need to bring one in? Recommend that. But
Sure.
all things that would obviously augment the value that you bring and and drive the business goals that need to happen. So,
Andrew, do you see the same thing where Wendy's describing having to come in and provide that education? It's actually why I gave up. When Debbie and I met, I was really grinding in that Northern Virginia investor GovCon community, and it got me nowhere. And 10% of the effort got a lot more business for us working with comms agencies. So that's why our business model changed. Now we work with consultants, the in-house comms team, and agencies as subcontractors because it was so much easier to make that value sell. And
right.
so that huge amount of education was exhausting for me because I just assumed, being raised by a marketing savvy person, that everyone must understand marketing and communication. So when you're coming in, Andrew, obviously Wendy's a one person shop. So there's some challenges and benefits there. Coming as an agency, I think you must have a minimum on your dollar amount, maybe how long they have to work with you. How much education do you usually find with your clients if they don't already have an existing comms strategy and comms team?
I mean, certainly there's a direct correlation to do they have an existing internal or external comms function to how much they value or understand what PR does.
Yep.
So it is pretty client specific. I would say, I think Wendy, you mentioned it in passing earlier, the value of PR and comms, whether it's reporting directly to the CEO or people just more broadly seeing it, has made over the last 12, 18 months, that sort of resurgence for comms has made it easier in many ways to not have to do quite so much of the education, at least not so much of the education, maybe with the point of contact that hires you. But a
Right.
lot of the time, we do have to help that internal resource educate the broader organization to make the
Good point.
case
Yeah.
for what they're doing. And so
Mhm.
maybe that's one thing that shifted a little bit. It's not always so much of just trying to demonstrate the value of us, the external PR, but how are we supporting our internal partners, demonstrating the value
Mm.
of what they're doing for the organization with our support.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a huge need. That's the thing that I've pushed for too, because we're all in the same kind of, trying to do the same thing, and I need the data that they can help to support justifying like why the comms is important, why is it driving value. So that's one thing I always ask of any communication agency or PR agency that I work with.
Yeah. Well, and Andrew, I think you raise a good point too, that when you come in as an agency, you don't have all the information. We just came in and started working with an agency that is small, they're growing. Our job is to take pitching off their hands so the owner can focus on the business of the business. And like many of our clients, they come to us with an emergency the first week. And we have to put barriers around that conversation and say, wait a minute, you want us to do X, Y, and Z, but we don't have all the information yet. Just because we can pitch doesn't mean anything if we're not pitching the right narrative to the right people in the right fashion. And that's just on the tactical level. On the strategic level, that internal person usually has the knowledge. They just either don't know it, or they're under so much pressure, they're just trying to get out the door and deliver a win rather than the win. And so a lot of times we have to slow our clients down so they are thinking strategically rather than just panicking into tactics.
Yeah, being an extension of an internal team is a valuable sort of role to fill. Either it helps slow them down or it allows them to focus on other things. You can just be the extra arms and legs to get more done for them, because a lot of the internal teams are leaner now than they were historically. So that is absolutely part of the, and then there's just the role sometimes of being a sounding board, a strategic counselor, mental health advisor occasionally for a lot of internal folks too. But a lot of those roles all go to why I continue to be really favorable towards AI, not like making comms go away. It's definitely going to change it, but that value add that you can bring through experience, through expertise, through the gut feeling that will never be replicated by AI, the more you can focus on that, and the more you can make yourself irreplaceable in those ways through what you're contributing, what you're creating, what you're generating for your client, the better positioned you are, because that's what they're looking for.
I have come across recently, and I think Andrew, you said it last year, but a couple of other folks have said on the show, it was new to me, but clearly it's more common than I expected, is bringing an agency in to be the bad guy or bad cop, if you will. We've had a couple of clients bring us in, and we were specifically told someone was basically acting as a fractional CCO and said the head of the association, actually, it was a political advocacy group. He keeps sending me 250-word pieces and saying, get this place as an op-ed. And I keep having to tell him, no, that's not an op-ed. That's a letter to the editor at best.
Yeah.
And it's not even that good of a letter to the editor. And he wasn't listening. So she just said, can you place this? And I said, no. She said, all right, what would take the place in? Like, we went through this whole process, and I was really confused because this person has a tremendous comms background. And after they paid us to just basically edit the piece and place it, which was easy, she said, thank you. I just wanted to show the boss that I wasn't the only one saying this, and that it's expensive when you get it wrong. Hey, look, we made a couple of grand to be the bad cop, but we've had it happen a few times. So Debbie, how often do you find, at your scale when you're coming in, do you play bad cop so the internal person can say, this is what I've been saying? You're the proof point where they weren't taken as credibly because they're sort of the familiarity breeds contempt concept.
Well, for me, definitely it wouldn't be on the PR side, but as an
Oh, excuse me. I'm
agency,
sorry.
we are
Yeah.
certainly brought in by a certain, particular area of leadership to educate and move along, major change in marketing, in brand, and those kind of things in an organization. And it's actually one of the things we're really, really good at because of our mindset and we workshop things. And so if we're doing a rebrand or and rollout or something like that for an organization, we are often hired because they know we won't just say yes, and that we will bring all stakeholders together and we will stand up for the process, for rallying all of the key stakeholders to have a seat at the table from the beginning all the way through so that they are educated throughout that process and they do know how we got from point A to point B. And sometimes we will find that we have changed their minds from a particular approach that they came to us for in the beginning. And we've gone through the research process or the process to confirm what they thought they wanted to do and learned that it was wrong and made that pivot. But if we're brought in by the CMO, we often have a pretty strong role in convincing the CEO of something or convincing them to change their mind about an approach. So that happens a lot for our agency. Um, and we sometimes are brought in when we hear that the agency before us just took orders and said yes and never brought
Yes.
them anything new to push them forward. And so in some ways, like that's the fun stuff. Like when you're brought into a challenging situation and people aren't agreeing and you overcome that,
Mhm.
like that's one of the things that you don't think about when you start to, choose this career pathway. But it's the fun big win when everyone is like kumbayaing at the end of a major project,
Mhm.
which started out with, turmoil or disagreement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I remember in that Tyson's Corner community, Debbie, everyone I talked to said, I got, shafted, or other words, by a PR firm. And it was just as a confusing concept to me because I was so new. And I'd only done freelance work where I was working in the political space where everyone was on my team, on my side. And so we actually have a whole part of our website that talks about our guarantees. And our first guarantee is we can't guarantee earned media. But then we have a good faith pledge. And that seems to be everyone's favorite part of our website because we're openly saying what is often
Mhm.
not said until the contract is being examined. And what I really found interesting, Debbie, to your point, is when we had a challenge, it was fintech. Guy I hadn't talked to in a decade. We connected on LinkedIn. He said, we're paying $175 an hour to a contractor. He's gotten us nothing for 4 months. It's like, I don't know. We don't know fintech. So we just jumped in to an AI client a month before ChatGPT launched. And suddenly that whole world changed. It went from being this sleepy little issue to the biggest issue in fintech. And in 8 months, we got 2 interviews with the Wall Street Journal. We got a Fox Business hit. We got some trade media. And by the time we were done with that contract, we had been that celebration, Davey, and we have a testimonial from that client saying we could just hand it over and we could walk away, knowing that Proven
Mhm.
Media was going to handle it. So to your point, like that was the first time that had ever happened to me, and so it's been really interesting to see how often, rather than coming in where people in Tyson's Corner were like, I got shafted once, I'm not interested in PR. It's I got shafted. I know PR is valuable. How can we get it right this time? And I think that's a big difference that I'm seeing in my own, little world of an 11-person company.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to have that spidey sense on, right?
Right,
So if a client is leaving somewhere else and they're coming to you with challenges, you have to overcome the baggage that they have left.
right.
And I think that's part of the initial conversations, like being able to try to ask
Mhm.
strategic questions to get a read on why something has failed.
Mhm.
Like, well, why were they, not happy with their PR firm? Is it because they didn't communicate together well? Is it because they thought that they would hire a PR firm and they just do everything and
Right.
never have any communication about what the stories are,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate. You at least have to have a point person internally to help because you got to help the PR and the marketing firm be successful. They just won't. And I know there's firms that actually require at least an internal point person that kind of that understands the work. Because you got to give them enough stuff to be able to do what they need to do and then vice versa. So,
Well, and I think too, if you don't have that conversation, you get surprised later. One of the
right.
things that we used to do, because again, coming from the project-based world, is go get a quick win. Show the client that's been shafted before that we can get the quick win. And 2.5 years ago, we got that quick win. The client was very pleased. And then, because we hadn't sat down and taken that 5 weeks to really understand them and have them understand us, they gave us two poorly defined assignments. We tried to be creative. They blew up in our face. And even though we afterwards delivered a number of top tier national, top tier state, and top tier trade media, as well as 1.9 million digital sessions over the course of 5 months, they skipped the last payment. They weren't
Mm.
happy with the results. And it's all because we didn't take that initial time to understand their real pain points and the
Mm.
process that they felt needed to happen. And so it was a painful lesson. It was $21,000 in a year when we really needed that 21,000. But it was I looked at it and I was like, I could go find where this person lives, or I can just take the lesson, which is never ever go for those quick wins until we understand each other.
I understand. Yeah,
Very painful
100%.
lesson.
It is interesting how often people are asking for some of those unrealistic things these days. And I think it's because in general, it feels like everyone is under tremendous pressure, obviously, to meet revenue numbers and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the quick win, the quick project almost is never as successful as it should be. And, sometimes it's better to be choosy than taking those because, like you said, Dustin, it's a tarnish, for you on a couple of levels if it doesn't go well. And from experience with all of the years in this business, like if you get that sense in the beginning, that they're looking at something unrealistic and you decide to take it and it does fail, then you've wasted a lot of effort, time, money, angst, and it doesn't look good for anyone.
Yeah. And that's very true for anyone that's doing fractional work because you're on your own kind of doing it. You're the one person shop, and that risk of failure is high. So we even more have to do, vetting and due diligence. And there's a lot, I mean, startups and, they're again, a lot of pressure. Investors want deliverable results right away. And again, earned media is getting harder and harder to get because there's just less journalists to cover what needs to get covered. I hope maybe AI will flip. I'm rooting for that industry because it's important. We need more journalists, not less.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and two, what's a journalist has, we had talked about this earlier, I think on our prep call, but was a journalist, the definition has expanded, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in some ways there are more journalist opportunities. In some ways there are less, but they're, as you say, harder to get into because now you have to pitch 50 outlets where maybe you normally previously would have had to pitch 15. And they all
Right.
had deep benches with
Right.
lots of little nuanced niches. And
Right.
so it is an interesting challenge. And then trying to turn that into marketing, convincing our client that Substack is valuable is easier now than it was a year and a half ago, but it's still a challenge.
Right.
Just like I suspect, and I was looked at Debbie on this, is get the Substack and then repurpose it for marketing. Does the marketing team generally understand the value of Substacks on an earned media side to turn that into the marketing collateral? So, all right, got a
Agree.
couple of minutes left. So why don't we just do a round robin here on the most important thing we haven't discussed that you either any one of the three following things. Something you've always wanted to say but haven't, something the industry needs to know, or something that clients need to know. And I'll go with I think clients because a lot of clients do seem to not understand that there's that 6 to 12 month investment window, and that if you try to go faster than that, not only might you get the message wrong, but you've actually wasted money. And so again, people, my father is a well-respected businessman in his region, and people call him and say, "Your business has skyrocketed. We can tell. Can you help us?" And he goes, "Yeah. Well, here's a consultant fee, and here it's going to cost you, $3K a month for the first 6 months to experiment." 3K a month, and these are all small businesses, quarter million, half a million. What's my guarantee? Well, your guarantee is that you're going to keep staying between 250 and 500 if you don't invest. I can't guarantee results for marketing and branding, but I can tell you what's going to happen if you don't do it. And I think there's truth in being that harsh sometimes to people who just want that silver bullet win when we all know it's not going to happen. So I think that for us, being able to lay out that 5 week initial sort of process, week by week, really reassures our clients who are more ignorant that we're not just saying, give us a first check and we're not going to do anything. These are actual deliverables that can happen, and that builds that trust of that 6 to 12 month window being a more legitimate campaign offering, if you will, campaign window.
Mm-hmm. I think I can call something out that kind of dovetails from that. While the laying out the process and the plan and agreeing that it needs to have some level of time, I think that we are all getting caught up in the speed at which we can get answers to everything, and the speed of everything just going out there. And my thing would be, don't circumvent creative thinking, don't circumvent creative, because if we all just put the same messages out there and scream into the the ether, your messages aren't going to stand out. So they need
Right.
a minute and some human creative thinking to help really differentiate your messages and help them be heard and really rise to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say this is as much a reminder for ourselves as it is a ask to clients too. But you know, really start with the goal first. I think often you start with what's the output or what's the result you're looking for, not what is the goal. And if you don't have a clearly defined goal, you're not going to have a good, successful strategy built from the start.
Mhm.
I mean, I always say this, but I think always bringing comms in the room, whether it's a campaign, and this is where the marketing partnership is good because we're going to ask the different questions, the tough questions, the what could go wrong questions, the like how maybe this might land the wrong way questions. And I think earlier versus later is always beneficial. So we just look at things a little bit differently, which is good. So, growth looks at it a certain way, content looks at a certain way, and then we look at it from obviously more a reputational way. And I think they're all valuable and it all makes everything stronger, whether it's a campaign, announcement, what have you.
That's a good point.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, this was fun. Debbie, good to see you again for the first time in a few years.
Thank you. Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, folks, thanks a lot. Have a good
Thank you.
rest
It
of
was
your day.
great.
Great to do it.
Bye,
Thank
all.
you.
Take care.